You know, I don't always pay a premium for a 1997 Toyota Land Cruiser Collector's Edition, but when I do, it shows up with $4,500 worth of roof damage on it. So here you have it. Most of the damages are in the middle. We got it throughout the middle, center, on the roof as well, across to both sides here. Hey YouTube, Untamed here. So as you can see by the title, today's video is a story that I'm not really happy sharing, but it is something I just want to get out there just because I do think that perhaps the lessons that I learned through this terrible experience might help someone else out there. Someone else who's maybe buying a vehicle or looking for, in particular, a used vehicle and buying it from out of state. So definitely have some pretty good lessons learned, as I'll really highlight through this story here, as well as I'll be throwing up a bunch of B-roll, bunch of video of the day that I took delivery of my 1997 Toyota Land Cruiser Collector's Edition and my 2014 Toyota FJ Cruiser Trail Teams Ultimate Edition. So for those of you who don't frequent my channel, you know that I purchased both of those vehicles from the same exact dealership. I bought them from Queensboro Volkswagen, a Volkswagen dealership of all things, out in New York. I bought them from them, and I gotta tell you, it really was my worst by a long shot purchase experience from start to finish. It was awful. I had many red flags where I maybe should have pulled off, but I didn't listen to my gut, and well, here I am. I'm dealing with this pretty big headache, and I have been dealing with it for the last several months. So I've considered making this video a couple times. In fact, I did. I made this video once before a couple months ago. I don't know, for some reason or another, I just didn't feel good about uploading it. The situation wasn't resolved yet, so I didn't want to upload it then. But now we're kind of at the point where it's as resolved as it can be, and I'm going to walk you through, kind of just highlight what that looks like now and the entire process. So I'll throw up some video here of me seeing the Land Cruiser and FJ Cruiser for the first time. As you can tell, the top level, the upper deck of this open carrier trailer was resting upon my 97 Land Cruiser. So I noticed it dang near immediately as I was walking up to him as he was pulling up. I was like, man, that top level looks awfully close to the roof of my Land Cruiser. And the closer I got, the more the pit in my stomach grew. Talk about a 180 of emotions. I remember being so excited and like so stoked to get my first ever 80 series Land Cruiser. And like many of you, I mean, I've searched far and wide to try to find a pristine example, well, as close to perfect example without totally breaking my bank, right? And that can be a chore to do because so many Land Cruiser 80 series, I mean, they're either A, rusted out, or they're beat to heck on the exterior, they're modded out to the point where you don't even want to drive it, or the interior is completely just gutted and just gross. So it is difficult to find a pretty good example for a good price point. So this particular one, I paid a premium for it. I told you guys in my previous videos, my collection video, I paid a premium for this. They had it listed for $29,900 originally, so just about $30,000 they had it listed for. They had just listed it when I had found it online. And after some negotiations back and forth with it was a GM there who I actually negotiated with on it. And like that's a whole nother story by itself, by the way. But after negotiating, I ended up buying it for $26,500. I paid that. And then I paid $2,000 or $2,250 to get it transported from New York to Wyoming. Okay, so you do the math there, roughly $28,500. Okay, so I paid $2,000 for one of the vehicles for transport, then $2,250 for the other vehicle. I forget which one was which, for the FJ Cruiser and the Land Cruiser. So $28,500, that's a lot. That's a lot of money to pay for an 80 series, but I am the type of person, like I would prefer getting a very nice example to have and enjoy, right? That's just the type of person I am at this point. Call me bougie, but I have gotten used to newer vehicles, so I wanted to have one that was at least going to be a very clean example for me to enjoy, okay? So I paid a premium for it, hoping that it was going to be just that and just as it was advertised, right? So he promoted it as a very pristine, clean, perfect example. I won't find a better one anywhere, and it definitely looked the part on the photos that they had posted for it. And I think it is. I mean, it really is a very nice example. But the situation unfolded here, and it really what ensued was just a series of unfortunate events and a series of headaches and trials and tribulations. So I'm gonna breeze through kind of what that looked like and really wrap up with my lessons learned. Again, hopefully that I can help some of you guys here. Okay. So I did draft up some notes just so I could totally try my best to kind of stay on topic, because there was a lot to this, guys. I mean, we're talking 5 months now, almost 5 months, 4 months of just back and forth with the insurance company, the transport company's insurance company, back and forth with them, back and forth with the dealership, just a ton of back and forth with the DMV, because there was a title issue with it from the person who traded in that FJ Cruiser and that Land Cruiser. Same person traded both of those into the dealership. They were in California. Whole ordeal. Okay, so I'll kind of peek at my notes here to make sure I stay on track. So I already talked about I paid a premium for this. I even paid a premium for that transport. Normally speaking, I've purchased a number of vehicles from all around the country, time and time again, and I always manage the transport. I always kind of work and arrange the bidding system, if you will. I say I'm going to pay this much money to get it transported, and hopefully I can get a taker for it within the time frame I'm trying to get it delivered. So I always manage that. And typically when you manage that, you pay like $150 to $200 to the broker, if you will, the person who's arranging the deal, putting your bid in the system, and then trucking companies and transport companies from around the nation, they can accept that bid, accept your job, if you will. So that is a whole nother topic, and I can make a whole different video on that. But so I always normally do that. Again, only paying $150 or $200 to the broker who's actually managing it, right? This time, the dealership said, hey, we can manage the transport for you. We can do $2,000, $2,250 for both vehicles. So $4,250 to transport both vehicles from New York to Wyoming. That's higher than I would normally pay. I think I normally would pay about $1,500 for that. I have transported from Oregon to Maryland before, and I think I paid $2,100 for that. But I accepted it because they made it sound as though they had a company that they worked with regularly and that they had like a trusting relationship with. That's the way it was presented to me. So I was like, you know what, let's make this easy. I'll get the vehicles pretty quick. I want to wait, because oftentimes we put in the bidding system, you got to wait several weeks, unfortunately, sometimes, unless you put in a high bid, right? But so they made it sound like they had a company that they worked with regularly, but that was not the case. Turns out that they put in a bid system like what I would have done, and they went to the lowest bidder. It ended up being a couple weeks that I waited, and they went to a super low bidder at $1,100 per vehicle. And well, like many things in life, you get what you pay for, and this was the prime example of that. So as you see here, the gentleman who was driving the vehicle that day, he didn't speak any English, hardly any English, hardly at all. So he ended up calling his boss, the owner of the company. It's a small company. He called him up, and he was immediately defensive when I talked to him on the phone there. But he was accepting ownership. And when I was there at the scene of him dropping off the vehicles, he was accepting ownership of it. So I ended up talking with him about it. The FJ Cruiser was also damaged. So there was something that had got caught on the front of the windshield and drug up over the roof, which was a peculiar thing. Even to me, I thought that was kind of strange, because it was on the upper level. It was on the upper level of the carrier, and I presume it was on the upper level the whole entire time. But something had hit the front and then drug over the top of it. So it wasn't like super severe damage, but it did break off the front trim piece above the FJ Cruiser, right above the windshield, as well as long deep scratch over the roof and a dent up there. So it was like the primary damage. Also had a scuff to the front bumper, as well as the A-pillar deep scuff and dent in it. And so much so where after I did my first wash, 50% of the damage went away, because again, just kind of adding to the fact that it was for sure brand new. I washed it and it kind of faded quite a bit, if that makes sense. So that FJ Cruiser was damaged, and my Land Cruiser. Obviously, the Land Cruiser was the bigger deal in this situation, because it was literally being crushed for God knows how long by this upper cargo trailer portion of it. The next day, the owner of this transport company calls me. He calls me. I'm at work. I pick up. He immediately jumps into claiming no fault at all. He said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm calling you. I'm letting you know that the damage caused to your Land Cruiser and FJ Cruiser were not done by my transport company, by my driver. It was not done by us. I was like, what do you mean? I literally have over 100 photos showing your trailer resting on the top of my roof. It's not even up for debate, right? And I told him I had 100 photos, and I told him I had 30 minutes of B-roll video documenting it on site before he even took it off. So I kind of reminded him of that. I told him of that. I don't think he was aware that I like hyper documented the entire situation. So I told him that. He's like, okay. He started backpedaling a little bit. But what he was telling me is like, there's no way that the damage shown on my Land Cruiser roof lined up with his trailer bottom. So that's what he was trying to claim. But I was like, that's not even up for debate. So already, immediate indicator that this is going to be a very long journey ahead, because I'm dealing with an individual like this who's doing anything in his power to try to deny fault. So already a huge headache. When I started going around and getting repair quotes, I got a huge range of repair cost quotes, right? So I mean, really, it ranged anywhere from, my typical range was right around $8,000 for repair, up to $11,000 or $12,000 being my highest repair. Granted, that was them replacing the entire roof skin of the Land Cruiser, which I believe is a bit overkill. So the one that I found from a reputable repair shop here in town was $4,500, and that was the lowest. You know, that was him helping out a little bit, giving a little bit of a military discount, him helping out legitimately, coming down to $4,500. The insurance company, they wanted to give $2,700 for the repair. So they sent someone out. Again, this is every step of this. It's just weeks of waiting, weeks of back and forth. They sent a rep out to come take pictures of the vehicle, even though I had already sent them dozens and video of the entire thing. They still wanted to get someone to come out here and do an assessment for it and determine how much they thought the damage would be. And they sent a separate photographer just to come out and get photos. Not even an assessor. They just came out to do photos of it. And then they sent an assessor. So it was just a bunch of redundancies and just a big headache. Again, time that I'm taking like away from work to make this happen. So just a huge, huge headache across the board. Big picture, and a lot of you guys are probably even thinking about this. Big picture, and if you're like me, you're probably thinking like me, and that was diminished value. So I was worried more so about the diminished value of the Land Cruiser at this point in particular. Yeah, I just paid a huge premium to get this nice vehicle. I shouldn't say huge premium, because there's ones that go for 40, 50, 60 when they're like extra perfect, right, in low miles. But, you know, $26,500 is still a lot of money to pay for a 26-year-old vehicle. But I was worried about, hey, it is no longer a one owner. Well, it's going to be a second owner no matter what, but it's no longer a second owner, low mileage, pristine example Land Cruiser 80 series, right? So it's no longer that. No accidents on the Carfax, of course. It was no longer that. And I was worried about the fact that, well, now it's no longer perfect. What does that mean for the value of it, right? And throughout this entire portion of the process, me trying to figure out diminished value and if I can even make that claim, the answer was no. I couldn't make a diminished value claim. Yeah, it turns out different states have different rules and eligibility requirements to actually do diminished value. Fun fact, learned that. Not to mention, there is a huge algorithm involved with diminished value. And I think diminished value claims make more sense on new vehicles, because that's the way the algorithm is catered toward. It's like how old, how many years is the vehicle, how many miles are on the vehicle. Like there's this little, no kidding, algorithm that they put together to determine how much value is lost due to the incident, right? So that was a huge headache trying to figure that out. And I learned that it really was just going to be extra difficult, even if I pursued that route, even with like a legal representative helping me out. Like it was just gonna be maybe a moot point, really, because values vary so much, right? So I mean, I just told you I paid $26,500 for mine, you know, but if you hop online, you can still find one. You can find one for anywhere from $7,000, $8,000 up to $15,000. You can find them in that range. Granted, underneath you're probably going to have a lot of rust, and the interior is going to be all janky, and there's going to be dents and bruises throughout, a lot more than what you'd find like on like my example, right? So it's just, it varies so much, and because of that, it just made for a very tough case to make. So I didn't bother doing that and trying to lean forward with it. The good news is, out of all this, is Progressive, their insurance company, their trailer insurance that he had, they don't report incidents like this to Carfax. So, I mean, that is kind of a silver lining. There's no black eye on the history report, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it happened, right? So it doesn't take away from the fact that there's damage on the roof now. So kind of peeking back in my notes here to make sure I'm kind of keeping on track. So all in, you guys know me at this point, several weeks in, I am countless hours into dealing with this and worrying about it and stressing out about it. And that's time that I don't get back, of course, right? And ultimately, like I mentioned, $2,700 is what they wanted to pay. $2,700 is what their insurance paid out. I tried to deny that. I said, hey, no, I'm not going to accept this. It needs to be higher. Here's a few quotes, all of which are above $8,000 at that point in time. That's all I had. It needs to be close to what the actual repair cost is going to be. But they said, no, you can go to those repair shops and then start the process, and then we'll send out another rep from Progressive here to supplement it as they actually begin the repair. I think they do this to prevent people from pocketing the check that they send out to you, as if that even matters. And when you own the vehicle, like I purchased the vehicle outright, got the title, but I digress. So I think that's the intent behind that, but it's just, again, needless back and forth trying to get them to up that figure amount. They ended up sending another $590 out, whoopee, bringing it up to right around $3,300. Again, the lowest quote that I found, $4,500. So still, even at this point in time, I don't even have a settlement that actually matches the repair cost. But if I choose to lean forward and get the roof repaired with this repair shop I'm telling you about, they will hopefully send another rep out toward the end or after it's repaired and actually finish out the full payment of the $4,500, upping it $1,200 if that makes sense. So hopefully that'll happen if I end up leaning forward and actually getting it repaired here in the next couple of weeks. The FJ Cruiser was equally a big headache. And again, guys, forgive me, I know there's a lot of details here. I could have easily separated the two vehicles in two different videos, but I'm just giving you the full side picture, okay? The FJ Cruiser was just as big of a headache. He fought, the company owner, transport company owner, fought tooth and nail to deny this claim on the FJ Cruiser. Yeah, there is zero denying the Land Cruiser after I'd sent the 100 photos of the trailer sitting on top of my Land. There's no denying that. But the FJ Cruiser, they had drug it through something, right? And the damage was there from something. It wasn't abundantly clear upon its arrival. It was just sitting on the top of the carrier, right? So he fought tooth and nail to avoid any kind of payout or going through insurance and accepting fault for that. So tooth and nail, they did not take, the transport company did not take photos of the roof of the FJ Cruiser upon pickup. So because they didn't take pictures of the roof upon pickup, the transport company was denying fault and then claiming that I needed to provide a photo of a before pickup photo of the roof, which in a normal happenstance, in a normal world, that should have been easy, right? I should have reached out to the dealership, say, hey, I'm going back and forth with the insurance company. Do you mind sending me a photo or two of the roof that you had of the vehicle on the advertisement? That didn't happen. The dealership was awful and a half. They refused to send me, they refused to help me out with the situation, even though they said that they would help me at the beginning. They just didn't want to get involved. They quickly peeled themselves out of the equation because they didn't want to get involved after the fact, even though they already told me. So, huge headache, and I'll talk about that here in a second, a little bit more about the dealership in particular. But all that to say, because I didn't provide a photo of the roof before pickup, they were claiming no fault, okay? They ultimately, the Progressive ultimately did side with me on it. And that was just, wasn't by happenstance or it took a lot of back and forth to get their insurance company to actually lean with me on this one, because they were totally representing their customer the entire process, right? I was the outsider, and it definitely felt that way throughout the entire process. So anyway, so they ended up paying out a little bit for the FJ Cruiser, not a lot, but then again, like I said, the FJ Cruiser wasn't the huge bit, the Land Cruiser was. When the Land Cruiser showed up too, another thing, that getting back to the dealership and them just being crummy to work with, the Land Cruiser showed up, the airbag light was on. This could have stemmed from it bouncing with the carrier on top of it, right, the trailer. So that could have happened. There's a terrible misaligned steering wheel The radio didn't work. The antenna didn't work. Doesn't retract and all that. A couple large door dings. All things that you would have hoped a reputable dealership would have shared with a customer buying 2 vehicles from them. But instead, they told me it's pristine, it's perfect, you won't find a nicer one. They just kind of hyper sold it to me, and I believed them. And based on the photos that they provided me, it really was that. So the dealership across the entire board from start to finish, as I look back at it, I just get such a pit in my stomach thinking about how bad of an experience it was. So much so where I was eager to sell the FJ Cruiser. I was eager to get rid of that just because every time I drove it or looked at it, I was reminded of this bad experience. And similarly with the Land Cruiser now. So I'm even debating on selling it as we move forward. And to add to that, the Land Cruiser. So the Land Cruiser title, I've yet to receive that. I purchased it in April, and I've yet to receive the title to that. So again, just kind of adding to what the heck? Why is this such a headache? The transport company, they showed me the amount that they were paid. It was $1,100. I paid $4,250 altogether. It was $1,100 per vehicle. So they got paid $2,200 for the entire job. When I asked the dealership saying, hey, I paid you $4,250, but I'm also seeing a receipt here from the actual transport company saying that they were only paid $1,100 per vehicle. What gives? Where did the other over $2,000 go? Is that money that you just pocketed from the thing? I paid that money for transport in particular. I asked them if they had paid that to the broker or whatever, could you please at least send me a receipt of that so I can have that for my records? And they said they would. I've not received a receipt. So I kind of gave up on that one, unfortunately. So again, just another slimy tactic I think that they deployed on me, and they got away with it. So I'm trying to think where I'm at on my notes here. The GM tells me, he just told me the other day that they had the title to the Land Cruiser finally. They had to go back and forth and get the proper points from the gentleman who traded it in to apply for a duplicate title in New York to actually send it to me. So it turned into, that was why it was a big, long wait according to him. So he said they finally have it and they'll be sending it to me here shortly. He said this week, but I am not holding my breath on that. So all that to say, sorry guys, I just kind of blabbed here. I try to keep with my notes a little bit on it. But really I just wanted to explain this crummy scenario that took place. Even though it was a crummy scenario, there are positive lessons to be learned from it. And that's the main crux, the main reason why I'm sharing this with you guys. Okay. So big picture, first and foremost, most importantly, as I got stressed out about this and I worried so much about it and I let it bother me for so long, I let it bother me. I eventually got to the point where I acknowledged the fact that although it's a crummy situation, nobody was hurt within it, and it is just a vehicle at the end of the day. It's just a vehicle. We can get it fixed. If I lose a few dollars on it, I lose a few dollars, right? So it's just money. At the end of the day, it's not worth sacrificing my health and stressing out about it as much as I did. So that's kind of the takeaway I had for it, right? So we'll get it fixed. I'll eventually sell the Land Cruiser, and there will be a very happy person who buys that sometime soon, probably. Or I'll sell it as is for way less money than what I paid. So again, that's just kind of the way forward for it. Another lesson learned, and you probably picked up on it as I was talking through it, but I am so grateful that I documented the crap out of the entire situation. Right, so when it arrived, right as it was arriving, I pulled out my phone. Naturally, being on YouTube all the time, I pulled out my phone. I was ready to go anyway, just to kind of highlight it coming off the truck. But just documenting the crap out of those situations, even if they're nice to you in person and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, totally, it's our fault," whatever. Even if they're telling you that, I've learned that their stories will often change when they talk to their insurance rep. Right, so don't rely on that. Don't rely on the good face back and forth exchange right at the scene. Document it, over document it, even to the point where maybe you're making them uncomfortable with your phone and recording. Do it, for sure, do it, because that's my only saving grace, I think, with this and getting their insurance company, Progressive, to actually cover it, especially for the FJ. So document the crud out of it. Next time, I will for sure manage my transport myself. I'm not going to rely on the dealership and try to get goaded out of a couple $1,000s for them just to line their pockets with, and that's what I presumed happened. So shame on me for letting that happen. But next time, I'm gonna continue to do what I normally do and manage that totally on my end. Speaking of which, if anyone wants to know that process and just kind of learn how to manage transport of vehicles across the country, let me know. I'm happy to do a video on that, a shorter video, of course. Other thing is, get a bunch of pre-pickup photos and save the photos from the ad. Like I said, I reached out to the dealership saying, hey, can you send me the advertisement photos that you had for it so I can send that to the insurance company as pre-pickup photos? They refused to do that. Well, I shouldn't say refused to do that. I said they were going to do it, but they never did. And it took pulling teeth to get them to finally send that. And it was just an unnecessary battle that I had to fight. It was just unnecessary headache. So get a ton of photos and save the photos from the ad as you buy a vehicle. So definitely recommend doing that. And ensure the dealership actually has a title that they're of the vehicles that they're selling you. So oftentimes they'll get a vehicle on trade-in real fast, and then they don't even have the title for it. And that was the case here. Make sure they actually have the title, and make sure that they have full confidence that the title is good, and they don't have to apply for a duplicate title or anything like that. Again, that was just a lesson learned here, right? So again, that's just it seems like a safe to assume thing. You would assume that they had the title to the vehicle that they're selling, but that didn't happen here. So that was definitely a good takeaway there. So altogether, like I already hinted at, this really was just such a terrible experience. I try to look for the silver linings and good lessons learned like we just talked about there, but it really did make me want to sell that FJ Cruiser pretty quick, just because I just kind of kept thinking about it, kept tying it to the experience. And then even with the Land Cruiser, I likely am going to be selling the Land Cruiser, and just matter of me deciding if I want to have that reputable shop here in town repair it for the $4,500 or to sell it outright the way it is right now, but obviously for a good chunk amount less, probably more than $4,500 less as is. So I'm kind of debating between those things, or potentially I can even try to keep a hold of it for a little bit longer and try to enjoy it a little bit more. So those are all the things on the table. I'm sorry guys, I made this a super long video, but I wanted just to show you what happened, talk through what happened, and really just talk through the terrible experience that I had altogether. But always look for the good. Always look for the silver lining, as there were some lessons learned here. So I hope some of you find this helpful. Hope some of you at least appreciate me sharing this with you. As always, I do appreciate you watching. Until next time.